good afternoon. I hope you all are having an eventful day at ETRetail's E-commerce and Digital Native Summit 2023. We are here for a very interesting chat on the topic investing in the Bharat e-commerce wave. I have with me on stage Vaibhav Gupta, the co-founder and CEO of Udon, and Rahul Taneja, partner Lightspeed India. Thank you, gentlemen. So to start with, I first want to take this opportunity, Vaibhav, and understand your idea behind starting Udaan 7 years back, and how has that changed over the years, especially as the company today is one of the key players in the B2B e-commerce space.
Thanks, Pallavi, and thanks you guys for this opportunity. I think back in 2015, when we were thinking of starting something, I think the genesis of Udaan came from the thinking we had that sitting in 2015, 30-year, 40-year, 50-year forward in India, the biggest companies for the next 30, 40 years are going to get created now, right? And, we felt that, we have an opportunity to build a big company, big business, as well as something which is very impactful to Indian society, Indian economy, right? And we felt there was an opportunity. And I think that led to the idea behind Udaan, because we started looking at big markets which are fragmented, which have a lot of potential to create value. And we came across trade market in the country, right? You have, millions and millions of farmers, small manufacturers. You have millions and millions of retailers. You have traders, wholesalers. India's economy, India runs on trade. It runs on trade credit, and all of that was a very age-old system, while very locally efficient, but was systemic, at a systemic level, was still very unorganized, right? And we felt that 30 years forward, it can't look like that. It will change, right? So the idea of, digital, at that time, it was very, very heavy flavor of smartphone in our head. So the idea was that smartphones will change it, right? And thus we started it. And I think even now I believe that kind of the starting point of the journey remains quite true, right? The more we have spent time in the reality of the scale of, how big it is it's actually has unfolded. It has become more and more real every day, right? I think we're sitting in Bangalore City. In Bangalore City, you have close to 200,000 retail endpoints, just Bangalore City, right? And annual consumption from those retail endpoints, be it a kirana store, pharmacy store, restaurant, repair shop, garment shop, is roughly about $10 billion, right? And there is a fascinating sort of activity, economic activity, which is happening, and now you take it across India, you have about, $1 trillion such consumption. It's all unorganized, right? So I think the scale is very real. The digital adoption has surprised me, right? Early on, we'll go to the shops and people will say, "Sir, मेरा लड़का आएगा, उसको बताना आप," right? Now you go into even a shop, they will not talk about the idea of buying online. That is assumed. They will just say कि अच्छा सर, आपके पास क्या क्या रेंज है, आपके क्या प्राइसेस हैं, आपकी सर्विस क्या है, मेरे को और ऐप्स पे ये मिलता है, right? I think the level of digital adoption has definitely surprised me, but the reality of the scale has become more and more real, even after kind of 7 years.
Wonderful insights, Vaibhav, and I think you have shared some very important data points and how and why digital adoption will become crucial even going forward. Rahul, I want to get an investor's perspective here. Lightspeed is one of the key investors for Udaan. Along with Udaan, there are some other players you invest in which are working in this space. Can you decode for us your view on the long-term growth prospect for the Bharat market?
Thank you, Pallavi. First of all, my job is very easy because half of what I'm going to say is being said by VG already. Look, I think it's a fascinating large market, right? I mean, we can argue on finer details of the number, but anywhere in the range of $1 trillion consumption spend happening in India, largely happening through small and medium-sized retailers, wholesalers, traders, brands, manufacturers, all of that, right? Now, how many such large markets exist in the country, right? This is probably the largest market, which over the last, I will say, 5-7 years has seen a very large tailwind of digital adoption happening, right? And therefore, I think therefore we are sitting at an amazing point in time where over the next, let's say 30 years, the way that this consumption spend of $1 trillion will happen will change dramatically, and therefore people who are investing in creating the right sort of infrastructure, both soft and hard infrastructure, in doing this are likely going to be the winners. And you know, that is, therefore it's repetitive, but that is the thesis behind the investment. And I think it's, you know, I think we are in very early stages, I will still say, of this journey. This journey is probably like a couple of decade-long journey, and I think it's really impressive to see how this adoption is happening. And yeah, therefore we continue to be like super excited about you know, where we are going.
Wonderful, great. Vaibhav, I want to come back to a point that you mentioned earlier, an example that you shared, that today if we go to a dukaan, it is assumed that online shopping will happen. It's not you know, a possibility now, it's a natural adoption that has happened. So from this retailer's lens, how different is the Bharat consumer from the so-called urban or the metro consumer? And if you can maybe add a point on how has Udaan's process been to cater to this consumer?
I think I'll share both similarities and differences. Shopkeepers, generally retail shopkeepers reflect the consumer they are serving, right? So the idea of India is a very big value-oriented market. Like growing up, my parents behaved like that, and they kind of inculcated the same in us. So fundamentally, it's similar across India. Shopkeepers behave; they are very value sensitive. Right, it's a very similar thing, be it urban, be it rural, be it semi-urban, right, or metros. They're all value sensitive. I think digital adoption is similar across the board, right? We're seeing them, right? What's different? One, urban markets tend to be very competitive, right? A shopkeeper has a lot of options. They're aware of multiple B2B platforms coming to them. They have visibility of what's happening in organized competition, B2C competition. So it's a very, very competitive and highly liquid market. It's very vibrant, competitive. As you go outside, say, top 20 cities of the country, it's a very different India. You don't see that much modern trade. You don't see that much kind of the B2C penetration. I think it's less competitive. It's probably maybe 15, 20 years, 30 years behind. So it's less competitive. A lot more need of speed in urban India, a lot more need of reliability as you go outside into the kind of semi-urban region. The selection changes quite a bit. what products buy. People buy a lot more unbranded goods as they go outside the top 20 cities, right? Which means the processes we have to work as a platform are a lot more around quality. We have to ensure that good quality products are being supplied. So that takes a lot of effort. That's different. I think the brand's penetration is much lower in kind of tier 2, tier 3 cities. So we all will see big brands, but they largely are in the top 20, 30 cities. Outside that, the pressure cooker will be different, the shoe will be different, the rice will be different, even the detergent bar will be different. So it's just less branded outside. I think, yeah, those are some of the differences between urban and rural.
Wonderful. I think very, very interesting of you to say that beyond the top 20, 30 cities, there's less competition there. So that brings me to my question to you, Rahul. Do you think there is a gap in the market which national retailers probably have not managed to tap, especially in terms of resonating with the regional context, with the local, with the local people? Does that gap exist? And if so, what needs to be done there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is one further nuance on that. I mean, even within urban India, the consumption pattern in a Bangalore is very different versus the consumption pattern in Bombay versus Delhi versus Calcutta, right? So I think I could say that we live in a continent, not in a country, because there are so many pockets of varying preferences. Some national level retailers have recognized this, and that is one of the key reasons why they are successful in the market. But by and large, I think one of the patterns that we need to recognize is that organized retail, despite being here for the last 20 odd years, has made a certain movement because there is a lot of trust that consumers place in their neighborhood kirana, and that trust is in the form of a relationship, it's in the form of credit, it's in the form of multiple things, right? Which is why both of these will continue to grow and not at the cost of each other, right? And therefore I think there is an opportunity to create a platform which serves this large chunk of retailers who are still responsible for 85-86% of the consumption in the category, right? And that is where, I guess the importance of a platform which recognizes that preferences in each micro market will be different. You have to build supply chains which cater accordingly. You have to build, suppliers accordingly. And I think that is the complex orchestration that needs to happen in order to be able to cater to these preferences. That orchestration today happens in a distributed manner by to 2 million or 10 million retailers across the country. Now, how do you orchestrate that in an organized manner, which can potentially only happen digitally, is what we're attempting to do here.
Okay, I think, thank you for mentioning, that there's a very big gap that still retailers have not managed to tap, right? And Vaibhav, here from Udaan's perspective again, currently, what does your strategy look like at a company level to tap, one, this gap, and second, to also maybe build on the entire personalizing trend that we see in the retail and in the e-commerce segment?
I think we are on a different journey. I think E-B2B as an industry is at a slightly different journey than I would say modern retail is or B2C e-commerce was. I think all of those industries go through a stage of sort of creation and then sort of built up. I think E-B2B is relatively early. We went through a lot of creation phase in the first 5-6 years, adoption, awareness, trials. I think last 2 years for us has been the kind of the build-up journey. There's a little bit more consolidation happening in the space, right? For us, like last year has been the year where we've grown and improved profitability, building up kind of the core capabilities. I expect the strategy for us for the next I would say at least 3 to 5 years will still be very capability driven. We have to build the core infra capabilities to actually ensure that we can just reach the market, right? We are now designing Udaan supply chain to reach roughly about 85% of all urban Indian population and roughly about 50% of all rural population of India, right? So we are targeting that 65% of reach. Now designing that supply chain which can reach that much of part of the country at very low cost on daily basis with large amount of assortments which are very local and regional. The rice in Mysore is different than the rice in Bangalore. I think that's a capability we're going to be investing a lot on, and I think that's a winning. That's one of the biggest competitive advantage of Udaan, to build something like this which doesn't exist so far in the country, right? Another big capability for us would be lending, right? Small shopkeepers do not have any CIBIL score, or CIBIL score doesn't correlate to their credit histories, right? How do you lend to small shopkeepers? How do you collect from them? How do you actually ensure that defaults are low? How you build their credit histories is again another capability, right? Similarly, there's a big capability around working with fragmented small manufacturers, small millers, small farmers, building processes around quality, around efficiency. And I think you need all of those three with this kind of technology platform which is driving all of this. I think that's what is needed to build EB2B, right? And I think that's what's going to be our focus for the next 5 years. Just keep building it, keep going deeper into the country.
Just a small follow-up on what you said, Vaibhav. In this process of building these capabilities, especially in the current environment that we are, where does focus on cost optimization come in? And for Udaan, how big, a focus point is that currently?
I think cost is the key, right? If you remember, what I was saying was shopkeepers, our customers reflect India and they're very value seeking. You cannot become a big value player in this country. You cannot offer value to your customers unless you can lower your cost. The way we see in Udaan is cost is our competitive advantage, right? We are actually driving every day how we can lower the cost so that I can give more value to my customers, right? And I think that's the way you have to do, like any big scale business in kind of the domains we are working on, mass, daily consumption, right? You have to really innovate on cost, right? Today's Udaan supply chain is by far the lowest supply chain in terms of the cost, highest in terms of reliability, and we carry tonnage which is probably 10x of any other e-commerce players on a daily basis. I think it's about innovating on cost. I think that's how you actually drive the value to the customer.
Wonderful. I think you said your entire comment on value and cost, and I have my headline there. So thank you. Great. So before we wrap this up, I have a quick rapid question for both of you. I'd like to start with Rahul. Rahul, what is the next big trend in e-commerce where you will be betting your money and Lightspeed's money?
My money and Lightspeed's money are tied together, so no questions about that. But yeah, look, I think let's take a step back, right? What makes a business interesting is a very large, very large market which is growing, and B, where there is a tailwind happening, right? One of the sectors where this is becoming very apparent is India becoming a supply hub for the world as the world diversifies from a single source which used to be China. And therefore, one of the interesting things that we are very excited about is people building from India for the world in terms of different product categories. So let's loosely call it cross-border commerce, right? That is from India but to outside the world. And within India, I would say Bharat continues to be like this massive underserved opportunity. And just to tie back to something that Vaibhav said earlier, there is more money to be made serving underserved, less competitive markets And I think Bharat continues to be like this massive unlock of value waiting to happen. So these two trends, I would say.
Wonderful. And now the final question for you, Vaibhav. One brand that you really look up to or maybe take notes to build your strategy at Udaan or your strategy in general as a business leader.
I think for our businesses, it's more than one. I think I'm always inspired by DMart. I'm inspired by Walmart. I'm inspired by Costco. I think these are the companies who fundamentally created companies which have spanned over not just one decade, multi-decades, and keep growing and become large part of the life of the country they are present in. I think that's what inspires me.
Wonderful, great. Thank you so much for your time, Rahul and Vaibhav. I hope you guys liked the conversation, and I hope the audience enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for being such a patient audience.
Thanks for hosting us.